Welcome to Lesson 8 of Learning New Testament Greek. In Lesson 7 we did a whole verse, our first whole verse, that was John 1:1. In this lesson we're going to do two whole verses. The first one is fairly brief and simple, just a repetition of verse 1, and that's verse 2. Then we'll skip verse 3, which has a few little complications, so we'll come back to it later, and we'll go on to verse 4. So two verses for this week are John 1:2 and John 1:4. Okay, so here is John chapter 1 verse 2. Houtos ein en arche pros ton theon. So as I said, this is pretty much a restatement of part of John 1:1. So I'm about to show my letter by letter translation. Here it is. Houtos ein en arche pros ton theon. So notice these two words are put right next to each other now. Ein with the long E and en with the short E. The only new word here is houtos, which means this. And the os ending tells us that it's masculine singular, so I put this man, or this person, or you could in fact say he, as most of our translations do. He was in beginning with the God, and our free translation is going to say he was in the beginning with God, which shows again how you can't just copy these Greek words into English one after the other, because there are subtle little differences with Greek having no the there but a the there, and English must have a the here but no the there. And the bottom line I've left blank for you to fill out. Okay, so now we'll go on to John 1:4. As I said, skipping verse 3 because of the few complications, and I've divided John 1:4 into two parts. The first part is this: en auto zoe ein. So our letter by letter translation: en auto zoe ein, and there is one new word here. That's the auto, and this word means him. We actually use this word in automobile. Automobile is something that is self-mobile, automobile. So we've taken it in English in the meaning self, which it sometimes has in Greek, but here it simply means him, not himself, but just him. So there's our translation: in him life was. And the proper translation would put it into the English order: in him was life. And again, in my translation I would use a capital L, and you might like to use a capital H as well for him. Now we come to the last part of the verse, fast progress now, which says this. Sorry, the print's a little bit smaller here, just to fit it in, but this is the second part of John chapter 1 verse 4, and it says kai hezoi ein tophos ton anthropon. So first our letter by letter translation: kai hezoi ein tophos ton anthropon. No new letters there, but one new word and a new ending. No, I think it's not a new ending, but the new word is anthropon, and again the word the takes an ending to match, and this word anthropon, the root word of it is anthropos, so that is a familiar word to English speakers because we have words like anthropology, the study of mankind. Yes, and the on ending we have met before in John 10:7, where Jesus said, "Ego eimi heithura ton probaton," of the sheep. And we notice too the pattern, the same as in verse 1, where the following clause picks up the end of the previous one. The first part said, "En auto zoe ein," and then the second part says, "Kai he zoe ein tophos ton anthropon." So the zoe at the end of this phrase is picked up at the beginning of this phrase. And again, as we translated in John 10:7, "Ego eimi heithura ton probaton," we translated it as the gate for the sheep. So this one, which our word-by-word translation says, "The life was the light of men," in my proper translation I would translate capital L, and I would probably say the capital L life was capital L light for men. Maybe in our proper translation we don't need the. The life was light for mankind, if you want a less sexist sort of translation. And just a final comment, we notice how the echoes of Genesis 1 continue. Can you spot them before I mention them? The echoes of Genesis 1 that we've seen in these 3 verses from John 1 that we've looked at. Well, remember in verse 1 we had arche, beginning, which is, those are the 2 exact words that Genesis 1 begins with in the Greek Bible, en arche, and John begins his Gospel with those exact 2 words, en arche, and then en hologos, and so that was a connection with God's Word. And here in these verses we have the word zoe, life, phos, light, and anthropon, mankind. So all these words are giving what's clearly a deliberate link that John is making in his prologue with Genesis chapter 1. So there we are, 2 very interesting and very significant verses from John's Gospel that we've covered in this lesson 8.